Story 1. My ex lived in an apartment 15 miles away. The night in question, at approximately 1 a.m., a neighbor of hers accidentally fired a round while cleaning his gun. The bullet went through their mutually shared wall, through another, and lodged in her refrigerator. The cops were called by another neighbor, and she ended up with a police report and stuff. I ended up reading the police report, and it mentioned her and a guy's name I didn't know were reported in bed at her place at the time of the accidental discharge. She confessed right there she had an F-buddy, 1.5 years down the drain. Story 2. Not me, but a childhood friend about 20 years ago. Jack was married to his high school sweetheart Diane, and they had 2 little boys. Jack was working 2 jobs so that Diane could go back and earn her nursing degree at a local college. One day, he got home from work, and Diane was waiting at home alone. No idea where the boys were, but assumed they were in childcare. Diane sat Jack down and told him that she was pregnant. His first reaction was surprise and joy, but then it hit him. He had gotten a vasectomy the year prior. Jack asked how it was possible, but before he could finish, Diane started crying. The baby was not his. Diane had been cheating on him for several months with a man in her nursing program. We'll call him Gary. Gary was married to Lily, and they had 1 or 2 kids. Jack was devastated, and I stood by him as his life fell apart. But the story doesn't end there. About a month later, after Diane admitted the truth to Jack, I was working in a call center with open cubicles. The people around me were super cool, and we got along great. I was still new to the group. For some reason, I shared my friend's very personal story. Not sure why, but I was barely 21, and I wanted these people to like me. At the conclusion of the story, the woman working right next to me got a very puzzled look on her face. She finished her call, put me in a no-call state, and asked, "Does Diane have dark auburn hair?" "Yes." "Is Jack really tall with a scar on his cheek?" "Yes." I was getting a very uncomfortable feeling. I had not protected Jack and Diane's names, as I did here in this post, but I didn't know Gary and Lily's names at that point. "That SOB!" she said as she pushed out of her chair, knocking it to the floor. It was Lily. A couple of weeks later, Lily returned to work, and we got the full story. Turns out, Diane had invited her side piece Gary to her oldest son's birthday party, which I did not attend. I think I had to work. Gary had brought Lily and the kids. Lily put 2 and 2 together. She confronted Gary, and he admitted it. I really wish the story had a happy ending, but sadly, everyone's life just blew up. Jack and Diane divorced. She gave the baby up for adoption, and they split custody of their boys. Gary ended up in prison after, but I don't remember how it happened. Jack went to a really dark place for many years, but has recently gotten his life back on track. Lily quit a month after she came back. Let this be a lesson. Even if you think you've covered your tracks when having an affair, all it takes is one person to have a big mouth and blow your world up. Story 3. A colleague of mine was out shopping when she ran into a family friend who happens to be a police officer. She asked how he was doing, and he said he was doing good, but that he was tired because they were out all night looking for a car that fled from a known prostitute spot. He mentioned that they never found the suspect, but that during the chase, the suspect's car hit a curb and lost its front bumper, so they were on the lookout for a white sedan without a front bumper. Later that evening, her husband returned from an out-of-town business trip without his front bumper. Want to take a wild guess what kind of car it was? A white sedan. Story 4. Many years ago, I was visiting my girlfriend in her city. We were long distance. She had a roommate, we'll call her Sandy, who was one of her best friends. One night, we all had gone out with some other people, drank, had a good time, and we were back at the apartment to sleep. Sandy had still been out when my girlfriend and I crashed. I wake up to my girlfriend's phone ringing. Quickly grab it to make it stop. Screen says Sandy is calling. I didn't hesitate at all. I answered her phone, thinking maybe Sandy was locked out or needed a ride, or who knows. On the other end of the phone was a man looking for my girlfriend. I'm like, who the F are you? He likewise wants to know who I am. My girlfriend finally wakes up to me basically yelling at this dude on the phone. One huge messy fight later, it turns out Sandy on the phone was the guy she was always texting, and regularly effing, mind you. She saved him as her best friend's name so she could freely text in front of me so I wouldn't be suspicious. Pretty slick tactics. Story 5. In an argument, she insisted that I randomly changed my opinion on Mike and Ike's because I used to despise them, and now I suddenly love them. She was going on and on about something related to me hating the texture. Chewy candy is my favorite, and would not drop it. I always absolutely loved Mike and Ike's. Even though they're overly sweet and kinda cheap, they're delicious. They're an import item here in the UK that you have to buy somewhere like Costco, so it's often a rare and pricey treat. So obviously very strange that my girlfriend of 7 months doesn't know this about me, or has it wrong. I thought she was either psychotic or trying to gaslight me, but it turns out it was a lot worse than that. The other thing is, though, I realized when hanging out with one of my coworkers, he said that he was absolutely disgusted by jelly beans and all the other chewy candy when I offered him some. That's when it hit. She got us mixed up, and she'd been with him the entire time. He didn't know either. So we broke up with her and are still friends to this day. Sometimes he even reads my posts. What up, Jason? Story 6. I got a bunch of creepy PMs on Discord and on Reddit. Stuff like, I have a secret that would change your entire world. And, if only you knew what went on behind your back. When I confronted the person and asked what they were talking about, they just went like, I can't tell you. Or like, how badly do you want to know? Turns out, my now ex-boyfriend was with some chick he met online who enjoyed stalking. If you found my new account, hello to you. Story 7. Through an iPad. Apple can sync messages between devices, but at the time in 2012-ish, it was a novel thing, so not everyone had 2 Apple devices nor allowed them to sync. My ex, however, did. While on her iPad watching some dumb video, I saw a message pop up from a girl named Leslie, not her real name, asking what song my ex wanted to hear next time. It was kind of weird, but I assumed they met at some girls' night out thing recently and became new friends, so whatever. Until she started replying from her phone in another room with a selfie she took of her half naked, saying something like, here's some inspiration. Turns out Leslie was a dude. Not just any dude, but a skinhead who wore a kilt and played the bass in some cheesy metal tribute band. And when I say skinhead, I mean the fancy kind. On a girls' night out, one of her trashy friends took her to a dive bar where he was playing. They got wasted and hooked up, and for a few months had a secret relationship going. So every time she had another girls' night out where she would crash at her friend's house, she was actually going to bang him. So yeah, I got cheated on with a kilt wearer whose life aspirations included living in Santa Rosa, California, breeding pit bulls, and working part-time as overnight security. They're still together as far as I know, living with his grandma. Through a mutual friend, she said the reason she cheated was because he was in a bad spot and I needed to help him. I guess having multiple felonies and being a racist is somehow irresistible. Story 8. One of my exes told on himself. I was trying to plan a surprise party for him, so I was definitely being secretive. I was excited and on my phone a lot trying to organize everyone and finish preparations. He started acting weird. I expected it a little, all things considered. Then he was accusatory. I kept reassuring him and made little hints, but he lost his damn mind at one point. He kept escalating, and I was getting the nagging feeling something was off. The night before my party, he confessed angrily, said he knew I was cheating on him, but it's okay because he had been messing with his coworker for a few months. I just walked out, told everyone to show up tomorrow anyway, let them in, watched his face turn pale white, told him this is why I was secretive, and I wished him well with his side piece in front of everyone, and left. It was awful, but man, I'm so glad I found out. I didn't suspect a thing. Though I'll admit I was overly trusting and naive in my past. Story 9. I needed to send my mom something for Mother's Day. Was thinking out loud when my husband suggested a specific online gift basket company. That man, to my knowledge, had never ordered a gift basket in his life. I bought all the gifts for our family and our business. Went into QuickBooks and searched for the name of the company. Found a Valentine's gift basket sent to a bartender at a place we sometimes stopped off to go together after work. Story 10. Drove past a motel as I was on my way home from visiting my parents in another city. Some of the motel room doors faced the freeway, and just as he was stepping out of one of the rooms, I happened to glance over as I drove by on the freeway. He was wearing his distinctive motorcycle suit, and his motorcycle was parked right there. He looked back into the room and was talking and laughing just as he stepped out and just as I saw him, so I didn't think he saw me or my car. I never revealed to him that this was how I found out, but he confessed when I said I knew he'd been unfaithful. Story 11. He tried texting his brother's ex-girlfriend, claimed I was too sick to engage in those activities. To be fair, at the time I had just gotten out of the hospital from septic shock, double kidney infection, and multiple other complications, and that I had given him permission to seek pleasure elsewhere. She screenshotted everything and sent it to me. He knew we were still friends at the time, so I was shocked when he attempted something like this with someone he knew I talked to frequently. She drove 2 hours down to our residence to confront him with me there. He was such a deer in the headlights when she showed up, and we were all patiently waiting for him to come inside to confront him. I gave him back his engagement ring then and there. Story 12. We lived together, and one of the rooms worked as an office space with a shared gaming PC. We each had our own laptop. One of the things we used to do was to leave open tabs with interesting news or articles for the other to read. I went to check something on the PC, and it turns out he forgot to close his WhatsApp online on one of the tabs. The first conversation was to an old classmate of his, who he recently reconnected with as friends. I wish I had you in my arms right now. He was in the bathroom. We just talked, and he was saying I was the love of his life. And 5 minutes later, he was texting another girl telling her how much he loves her. Previous to that, I spent months asking if everything was okay and that something was off in our relationship, and was treated as crazy and a bad girlfriend for even thinking that he might have met someone else. Story 13. One time, when I knew my ex was cheating and I was trying to get him to admit it so I could break up with him, he started sending me screenshots of our texts to show me how crazy I was being. One of those screenshots had the little box at the bottom of the text chat of his camera roll open, I guess while he was sending me the screenshots. There was a picture of another girl, pics of him at her house, etc. I actually laughed out loud when I saw it. Something about him trying to convince me I'm insane while simultaneously sending me evidence by accident was weirdly hilarious. Something about him trying to convince me I'm insane while simultaneously sending me evidence by accident was oddly hilarious. Story 14. The guy I was dating told me that he was going up to his old college to visit some friends, and that his ex was going to be there. He told me over and over that they were just friends and nothing would happen. That should have been the first red flag waving in my face, but I trusted him. Then, on the way home, he called me randomly and said that he and his ex had talked, and they realized they were both soulmates, that they would eventually end up together. But he wanted to try things out with me first. Like, WTF? No, I am not your backup plan. Story 15. At work, his company subcontracted off of my company. They were in construction, and we offered rig camp services, so the company would tear down and set up for us. Anyway, he's had a close relationship with his office assistant. One day, I received a frantic call from him crying, saying his job was over. Then she called and said she'd been fixing it and not to worry about it. I had no idea what was happening. Apparently, they were both caught in a hotel room doing drugs and obviously having an affair, and later that morning, he was found outside the camp passed out in the company truck, and he was promptly fired. That afternoon, I was brought into my manager's office, and my supportive boss broke it to me like this. He said, "Would you like the good news or bad news first?" I said good. I got a gift card, and was then told that my husband of a year was a lying, cheating piece of junkie. Yay, me! Story 16. My 9-year-old neighbor girl used to come over and play with our dog. She was very sweet, and I felt bad for her, as her mom was a barfly, and she was often alone, so I didn't mind. She told me once that when I leave for my second job, another girl comes over and leaves just before I get home. Then I found one of her long curly hairs in our bed. In high school, a guy friend of mine came into my work and asked when my boyfriend and I broke up. I was wearing his senior key and said we hadn't broken up. He desperately tried to backpedal, but I made him talk. In another town, he had seen a girl wearing his letter jacket, and in a different town, another girl had his class ring. 3 years ago, I registered my husband's email for our new QuickBooks. I was gathering documents, and the tax lady was emailing me some information I needed so we could file taxes. When I checked his email, I found one from Tinder thanking him for joining. Story 17. We'd been together just under a year. One day, I was talking to my close friend and mentioned being excited to go to the movies with him. She looked super confused and said, "Wait, you're still together?" Now both of us were totally confused, and she just pulled out her phone and showed me a pic on Instagram of a girl we both knew. My boyfriend was in the pic kissing her, and the caption said something along the lines of, "Life's easy when you have the best boyfriend in the world by your side." I was floored. It turned out that everyone in our friend group knew. Most of them assumed I was just handling the breakup super well and didn't want to pry because I'm a very private person and didn't really want to talk about my personal life too much. Others knew he was cheating and didn't say a single word when I brought him up in conversation as my boyfriend. To this day, I think back and cringe. I felt like a complete idiot. Story 18. Not me, but my parents. My dad came home, went to the bathroom, went straight to bed, and said he had dinner at the pub. I, 16-ish at the time, went to the bathroom after him and found a floating in the toilet water. I instantly knew it had to belong to my dad with someone else, because it wasn't there when I was in the bathroom earlier, and my parents had no reason to need one, both in their 50s and married for decades. I went to the kitchen and got my mom to follow me to the toilet to show it to her. Dad told me it must have been stuck on his seat at the pub and stuck to his pants all the way home up until he went to the toilet. They stayed together for about 6 more months. Story 19. My ex said she wanted to go out by herself on a Saturday afternoon. She said she was going to go fishing. I stayed at her parents' and started to get worried when it got dark and she still wasn't back. So I called her, and there was silence on the other end. She said she was in a park, but the silence clearly felt like she was indoors. Suddenly, I hear what sounded like a small dog barking in the background, and I could swear it echoed. She said it was someone walking a dog. I said, "Okay," kind of in denial. I knew she was lying, I just didn't know why. Fast forward to a week later, I found some weird parking tickets assigned to our car's plate number in an app the city provided for parking purposes. Strange hours, cars parked for way too long in a parking meter downtown, always the same spot next to a residential apartment building, early in the morning and during work hours. And during the afternoon, she said she had gone fishing. I went on to look up her Facebook to find out who she was seeing behind my back and found her boss's profile. And lo and behold, he had a small dog with him in one of the pics. The same kind of dog I heard on the phone a week before. I also found a picture taken right in front of the building where our car had gotten those parking tickets. And that was it. When I confronted her, she started a very weird routine of admitting and then denying it, which drove me crazy for months. I forgave her at first, but it kept happening, and eventually it led to a divorce. Story 20. I kind of already suspected she was cheating on me with one of her coworkers, but one day, during a period of time that I was on a smothered and covered hash brown kick, I ended up stopping by Denny's near me to get some. Right around the time she had just gotten off work, she texted me saying she was going to be late coming home because she was out getting something to eat with a couple of her friends. I asked her where they were eating, and she said Denny's. I asked if she was there now. She said yes. And I said, "No, you aren't, because I'm here right now." There were a few other things that really drove it home after that. Story 21. We were on a doctor's appointment. I was 3 months pregnant with our child. He was a happy father-to-be, or so I thought. It was the first time we heard our baby's heartbeat. On our drive home, he was very quiet without even a hint of excitement on his face. That triggered me to investigate his social media accounts, until I saw this girl with his comment of a heart emoji. I messaged the girl, and she said that they are in a relationship. Long story short, I got out of the relationship, gave birth to my baby, and they are still together.